My friends, good day. A divisive topic today. Should we tax billionaires? Should we tax them to death, as often happens? People call for it. It comes up very regularly. There are plenty of people, you'll find them on social media, even in politics, who say it's the solution, with a capital S, to really put an end to inequality, poverty, the economic crisis. All you want to do is impose taxes, sometimes even 100% taxes on billionaires, take their money, and just like that, we solve all our problems. So, in my opinion, that's a bit of a simplistic view. It's the perspective of people who've watched a little too much Robin Hood and who feel like the state is literally going to go and rob billionaires, take their money, then open an office or set up a table in a public square with envelopes and people line up and here you go, here you go, here you go, here's 85 euros per person. Maybe that's not really how it works. That means there are several things to look at. First, the simplest thing is that if the government started taxing billionaires, well, it would bring in more money. And again, that's in the naive view. But as long as it's bringing in more money, well, what's going to happen is that expenses for food, taxi fares, shoes, luxury watches, private jets, corruption, envelopes, slush funds, all of that will increase, quite simply. That means that even if the government were to tax billionaires and actually take in more money, it's not the public, it's not the people riding the subway, riding the RERA, who are going to see any of it. So that's clear. It will simply go to keep the government running and allow it to spend with even more extravagance. That's the first thing. Secondly, on a practical level, you have to understand one thing. When someone is called a billionaire, it doesn't mean he just takes out his bank card. He puts it into an ATM, enters his PIN balance, and then you see the balance in numbers. It's not really like that. These are fortunes that are extremely complicated, extremely spread out. He might have, I don't know, he might have a yacht registered in the Seychelles. He might have assets held by a property holding company in Luxembourg. He might have intellectual property held in Hong Kong and so on. He might also have shares in private and public markets, unrealized gains, debts as well, and so on. So it's not easy to just take his fortune and seize it or tax it because it's not under a single jurisdiction. It's spread across a lot of jurisdictions, and sometimes when you look at it, if you start to count it up, maybe you won't have the billion you thought you had when you started the story. So there's that already. And generally, they have very good advisors, they have lawyers, they even have politicians who inform them, who keep them updated and all that. So it's not just a fortune that's available for anyone to just come and take like that. Another thing, what also happens is that we're not in the 16th century. That means that today fortunes are extremely mobile. If there's a problem somewhere, if a country suddenly becomes hostile, what happens with just a few phone calls, 2 or 3 clicks online, is that huge fortunes move, they leave. It's not too complicated. Take the United Kingdom, for example, which decided to go with confiscatory taxes. Well, it's the country where the most billionaires are leaving. So these are billionaires or families, sometimes with hundreds of millions, tens of millions, who are leaving at full speed. So it's not enough to just say we're going to tax them and they'll stay, they'll pay. That's something else you have to consider in the equation. And I'll even tell you something. When we call to tax the rich, do you know what's going to happen? So the state, from a so-called populist point of view, it's true that it allowed some politicians to stir things up. We're going to tax them, you'll see, we're going to go after them. It starts with the billionaires. We won't find the billionaires later, they're out of reach. We say we'll target millionaires, but we can't find them either. So what do? You go see Didier and Michelle who live in an apartment, they're retirees. And then we tell them, I think you have a spare room between you. There's that room at the end, the one that belonged to your son who doesn't live with you anymore. So we're going to tax you, and then you'll end up with a tax that's going to take from your pension, that's going to take from your minimum wage, and so on. Because quite simply, when you say we need to tax the rich, what are you doing? You're calling on the state. We already have a greedy state. We already have a state that's addicted to quick cash, that's wasting it, spending it, literally burning the money it takes from the public. On top of that, it's going into debt in the name of the public. So it's not just someone who comes and takes your income. That means if they take your income, you realize you're doing forced labor because you have to work for free to pay this state, to pay for its lifestyle. It also takes on debts in your name that you'll eventually have to pay, or your descendants will. At that point, you go to this state that is so addicted to cash to tell it that it needs to tax more. You say that billionaires should be taxed more, but what will it hear? It will hear that it needs to tax more. It will hear that the population wants more taxes, wants more levies. So what it's going to do, don't worry, it will go for it. It will come and tax as many people as possible. After that, well, it's clear that it's like in the United Kingdom. We said it, we need to tax. Honestly, that's how it started. We need to tax the billionaires. And the next thing that happened was that 650,000 retirees received the tax bill for the first time. Miserable pensions, pensions that don't even allow them to pay for heating, well, they received the tax form for the first time. The state takes and wastes, and when it runs out of money, what does it do then when there's nothing left? Either it borrows, and if it can't find more money, well, it raises taxes, and if you refuse to pay, well, it sends the police after you, or it seizes your bank account. I mean, for them, you have to look at it from the other side. On the other side, it's printing money. You see, you and me, if we want money, what do? We work. And if we want more money, what do? We work harder, better, and put in more effort. That's all. But on the government side, that's it. They got, I don't know, let's say 10 billion, then they burned through it. Well, they want 15 next year, so you increase taxes by 50%, and that's it. And then you want 20, you ask for 20, you want 30, you ask for 30. And if they don't pay, we seize their assets. That's it. Can you imagine? For them, it's free money. They collect endlessly. Something else? And that maybe that's something people notice less. Everything I've told you so far is something people can see. If they stop, think a little, or look into it, they can see it. Now, the other thing, there's something you need to know. The state is not a neutral tool. The state is a committee, an organization that serves the ruling classes. The state is not at your service. It serves the ruling classes. What does that mean? It means that even if, let's imagine, even if it were to tax billionaires, he taxes the billionaires, and the billionaires are there and they can't leave, they pay. You know what's going to happen? He's going to send that money right back around. And not only is he going to give it back to them, but he's going to give it back with an increase. You see? Because basically he works for them. You shouldn't think that the state is just some kind of uncle or benevolent father somewhere. No, it works for the ruling classes. Yes, the state does redistribution. Yes, the state redistributes from the bottom to the top, from the bottom to the top. Even if sometimes you feel like, because they're very clever at dressing things up, you feel like they're helping you. They're not helping you at all. Look, I used to live in France, for example. I lived in a building with residents eligible for housing benefits. I couldn't get housing benefits since I didn't have a residence permit, and I left without one. But just to tell you, the landlord wrote me a letter, I should have kept it, that said, look, next month the state will increase the housing benefits by 50 euros. We're going to increase your rent by 50 euros. It's as simple as that. That means all of what we call assistance is absorbed by the landlords into what we call the rent. That means if an item, a property is rented for 1,000 euros per month, if the state injects 250 euros of assistance, it won't go down to 750 euros. On the contrary, it will increase by 250. So the owner, the landlord, the property owners will capture all of what we call assistance. You see, so they're very good at that. That means the state works for the ruling classes. It's not working for you once again. And the more you call on the state to take money, whether for the rich or anyone else, the more state you're asking for in your life. The more legitimacy you give to civil servants to say that the people are asking for it, we're just following what the people are asking us to do. You see? So for me, the state shouldn't tax the rich, nor the poor, nor the middle class. It should disappear, it should step aside, it should cut its spending, reduce the number of civil servants. I lived in the United Kingdom, I can tell you something. At the time when the United Kingdom ruled 26% of the land, you know, the British Empire at the height of its glory ruled 26%, so a quarter of the land on Earth. You see? A quarter of the habitable surface of the planet was managed by the United Kingdom. Well, at that time, it had fewer civil servants than it does today. You see, that's the thing. So we have sprawling states, we have states making decisions against the nation, decisions against us, decisions against future generations. And we're literally being held hostage when we're, for example, in the West, we're held hostage by sprawling states, by civil servants breathing down our necks, micromanaging every aspect of our lives. These people need to leave our lives. These are people who need to let us live. We weren't born to serve a state, to fund the state, and then lay our money and the fruit of our labor at its feet. We're literally in a form of slavery. You have to realize the slave didn't work entirely for free. The slave kept a part of the fruit of his labor. Because, first of all, you had to buy him, it wasn't free, you had to pay, you had to invest. It took a lot to get a slave. And secondly, the slave was entitled to an allowance. So today we have countries that are so heavily taxed that the average worker is literally at the same level as a slave from the 1700s. He works constantly, but in the end, everything goes to the state. We didn't get rid of slavery, of the slave master, just for the state to replace him, for us to give the state the entirety of the fruits of our labor, and then for it to agree to give us a little bit here, a small check there, a little allowance there, and just leave us enough to live on. You do realize that this isn't the kind of choice any civilization would have found acceptable even just 100 years ago. Let me remind you that income taxes were invented only recently. They were invented as a temporary measure, basically, when the World War started. It was to finance wars, and it was supposed to be temporary. When the United Kingdom invented the first income tax, it was 3%. It only affected a small part of the population, and it was supposed to be something temporary. Today, you have a state that takes more than 50% of the product of labor, and it's not temporary, it's permanent. You see, it's not possible. It can't go on like this. And the solution, you can't say we're in slavery, so the solution is more slavery. That won't work. That's over. The system is collapsing. There you go, my friends. Thank you for watching this video up to this point. My book, Astrology, Like a Really Good Marketer, I'm telling you about it at the very last minute of the video, right when people are the least attentive, but that's okay. It's also an extremely polarizing book, which also shows you, you're going to see here, a lot of situations involving the state, state agencies, who use green politics here as a pretext to direct the money from the masses to a minority. As usual, that's how it is. That's it. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.